Welcome to Vanguard, where humans aren't the underdogs. We're the endgame. Enjoy the journey. The auction hall above Kepler Prime was not built for people like Marcus Chen. It was vast, an artificial cathedral of glass and alloy suspended in orbit, where gravity was optional and wealth was assumed. Holographic banners drifted lazily through the air, displaying corporate sigils from 100 star systems. The floor shimmered with reactive light, adjusting itself beneath the footsteps of beings whose combined net worth could buy planets and call it a rounding error. Marcus stood near the back, exactly where someone like him was expected to stand. His jacket was old, the fabric worn thin at the elbows. His boots had been repaired twice already, and the repair jobs showed. He kept his hands in his pockets, not out of casual confidence, but to hide the fact that they shook slightly every time a new bid echoed through the chamber. He did not belong here, and everyone could see it. Lot after lot rolled past on the massive central holoscreen. Salvage cruisers, retrofitted frigates, pre-war patrol ships stripped down and polished just enough to look respectable. The bidding was fast, aggressive, almost bored. Numbers climbed in seconds that Marcus hadn't seen in his entire life. 42,000 credits, the auctioneer announced smoothly. A ripple of polite approval passed through the crowd as another vessel vanished into corporate ownership. Marcus swallowed. 42,000 credits might as well have been a myth. He had 306 to his name. Not 300,000. Not 3,600. 306. Enough to keep his failing salvage business alive for another few weeks. Barely enough to buy a decent escape pod if things went bad. And things had been going bad for a long time. He watched another ship disappear from the screen and forced himself not to look at the credit totals scrolling beside it. This was stupid. He knew it was stupid. Coming here had been a long shot stacked on top of desperation. But desperation had a way of overriding good judgment. Then the next image appeared. The sleek silhouette vanished, replaced by something else entirely. For a moment, the hall was silent. Then it laughed. The sound was not cruel at first, more surprise than anything. But surprise quickly curdled into mockery as the hologram rotated slowly, revealing the full extent of the damage. The ship was massive, nearly 300 meters long, an armored cruiser by its original design, its hull thick and layered, built for sustained combat. But now it looked like it had lost a fight with a star. Hull breaches gaped along its sides like open wounds. Entire sections were twisted at unnatural angles. The metal warped and folded as if it had been grabbed by something far stronger than physics was supposed to allow. The engines were melted, their once clean geometry sagging into useless slag. Marcus leaned forward despite himself. He had grown up around ships, not luxury liners or corporate flagships, but working vessels, salvage rigs, freighters held together by stubbornness and patchwork repairs. His grandfather had served in the human fleet back during the first contact wars, back when humanity was still considered a curiosity instead of a minor inconvenience. The old man had talked about ships the way other people talked about family, especially the Armstrong class. They built those things to survive hell, his grandfather had said once, staring at a grainy archival image. Triple redundancy on everything. You could blow half the ship away and she'd still crawl home. Marcus squinted at the hologram. Yes, the damage was extensive. No one could deny that. But something about it felt wrong. Ladies and gentlemen, the auctioneer said, failing completely to hide his amusement, we have here the Indomitable, a human Armstrong-class armored cruiser, approximately 200 years old. The laughter grew louder. As you can see, the auctioneer continued, gesturing broadly, she has seen better days. A reptilian saurian near the front hissed. The sound translated instantly into a mocking chuckle through the hall's universal translators. We'll start the bidding at 1,000 credits, the auctioneer said, already knowing the response. Silence. 500? Nothing. Someone muttered a joke in a language Marcus didn't recognize, but the translator helpfully rendered the punchline anyway. More laughter followed. Very well, the auctioneer said, spreading his hands. 100 credits. Surely someone wants this fine example of historical scrap metal. Marcus's heart began to pound. He studied the image more closely, ignoring the noise around him. The hull breaches were large, yes, but they were in the outer armor sections. Behind them, the internal structure looked intact, scarred but not collapsed. And the twisted frame everyone was laughing at, that didn't look like failure. It looked like stress taken on purpose, like armor that had moved to absorb impact. 10 credits, the auctioneer said, his voice openly mocking now. My friends, I am practically giving this away. Marcus barely felt his mouth move. 6. The word slipped out before he could stop it. The hall went silent. Hundreds of eyes, compound, slitted, glowing, mechanical, turned toward him. The sudden attention hit like a physical force, and Marcus felt heat rush to his face. I'm sorry, the auctioneer said slowly. Did someone bid? Marcus raised his hand. The laughter that followed was louder than before, sharper this time. Not surprise, but delight. The kind people took in watching someone else make a mistake. The Saurian who had mocked the ship earlier turned fully to face him. Marcus recognized him immediately. Everyone did. Keskus. He owned half the salvage operations in the sector. A man who could buy and sell Marcus's entire life without noticing the transaction. 6 credits, Kesk said, his translator grinding the words into something deliberately unpleasant. Human. That ship is worth less than the air in this room. You waste everyone's time. Marcus felt the weight of the moment pressing down on him. Every rational thought screamed at him to back down, to laugh it off, to pretend it had been a joke. Instead, he surprised himself. Then why don't you outbid me? He asked. For a fraction of a second, Kesk's eyes narrowed. The room held its breath. Then the Saurian made a dismissive gesture with his clawed hand. Enjoy your coffin, human, he said. May you rest inside it. The auctioneer didn't hesitate. 6 credits going once, he said briskly. Going twice, sold. The gavel struck. Marcus Chen, with nearly his entire net worth, had just bought the worst deal in salvage auction history. The laughter followed him out of the hall, echoing long after the doors slid shut behind him. He told himself he had made a terrible mistake, but deep down, buried beneath fear and doubt, something else stirred. A quiet, stubborn certainty. Everyone else had looked at that ship and seen a corpse. Marcus wasn't so sure. 3 hours later, the laughter still echoed in Marcus Chen's head. Dock 7 of Kepler Station was quiet in a way the auction hall had never been. No music, no crowds, just the low, constant hum of station systems and the distant vibration of passing traffic through the superstructure. The kind of silence that made mistakes feel heavier. The Indomitable hung in the zero-gravity bay like a corpse on display. Up close, the ship looked worse than it had on the auction holoscreen. Scorch marks streaked across the armored hull in long, ugly scars. Entire sections were dark, power conduits dead and exposed like severed veins. The once proud human design, blocky, functional, unapologetically industrial, had been twisted into something that looked almost pitiful. Marcus floated there in his mag boots, staring. You actually bought this thing? A voice asked. Marcus turned to see Prex, the Quellen dock manager, hovering nearby with a datapad clutched to his chest. Prex's species had soft features and wide eyes, and unlike most station officials, he hadn't laughed when Marcus filed the transfer request. I did, Marcus said. Prex rotated slowly, examining the ship from a different angle. I've seen bad decisions, he said carefully. This one might be historic. Marcus didn't answer. Look, Prex continued, lowering his voice. I'll help you get her into your repair bay, but don't sink more credits into this than you can afford to lose. Some wrecks stay wrecks for a reason. I know, Marcus said. It was a lie, but a necessary one. The towing operation took nearly 2 hours. Massive station drones latched onto the cruiser's reinforced hardpoints and guided it slowly through the docking lanes. The Indomitable barely fit inside Marcus's repair dock, a cramped, privately leased bay meant for small freighters and salvage fragments, not 300-meter warships. Metal groaned as the ship settled into place. Prex shook his head. "Good luck, friend," he said. "You're going to need it." When the dock doors sealed and Prex drifted away, the silence deepened. Marcus stood alone with the ship. Up close, without an audience, the Indomitable felt different. Less like a joke, more like a challenge. The scars told a story, but not the one the auction hall had assumed. These weren't random impacts, they were patterns. Intentional, almost. Marcus took a steadying breath and grabbed his toolkit. The nearest airlock was dark, its control panel shattered and cold. Any modern ship would have been sealed permanently in that condition. But Armstrong-class cruisers had been built with something else in mind. Marcus found the manual override, a simple mechanical lever, no power required. He pulled. The lever resisted for a moment, then moved. With a hiss of equalizing pressure, the airlock door began to open. Marcus froze. That shouldn't have worked. He waited, listening. No alarms, no explosive decompression, just the faint whisper of old seals stretching after centuries of neglect. He stepped inside. The corridor beyond was dark, the walls scarred and blackened. His helmet light cut a narrow cone through the gloom, illuminating drifting dust motes that hadn't moved in decades. The air was thin but breathable, emergency atmosphere at best. Life support was offline. That much was clear. Marcus moved forward slowly, boots clanging softly against the deck plating. Every instinct told him to turn back, to seal the airlock and walk away before he discovered something he couldn't afford to deal with. Then the lights flickered. Dim red emergency panels sputtered to life along the corridor, one by one, like tired eyes opening. Marcus stopped dead. "No," he whispered. Every scan at the auction had shown 0 energy signatures. Dead reactors. No power, no active systems. That was why the ship had been dismissed so completely. Yet here he was, standing inside a vessel that had just powered itself, however weakly, without external input. He took another step. A sound reached him then, barely audible beneath the station's distant hum. A low, rhythmic vibration. Not a mechanical whine, not the erratic buzz of failing circuitry. Something steadier. Something that reminded Marcus, irrationally, of a heartbeat. He followed the sound deeper into the ship. As he moved, more emergency lights flickered on, sections activating just long enough to guide him forward before dimming again. It felt less like random power fluctuation and more like response, as if the ship knew he was there. The corridors sloped downward, leading toward the engineering decks. A vertical shaft yawned open ahead, its ladder miraculously intact. Marcus peered down into darkness, the faint hum growing louder with each meter. He clipped his tether and began to climb. 3 levels down, the air grew colder. His breath fogged inside his helmet. The walls here were thicker, reinforced, their surfaces unmarred by the damage above. The hum was unmistakable now. Marcus reached the engineering deck and squeezed through doors jammed half open by warped metal. Beyond them, the space opened into a vast chamber, and Marcus forgot to breathe. The main reactor core stood dark and cold at the center of the room, exactly as the scans had indicated. A dead giant, silent and inert. But behind it, half hidden in shadow, something glowed. A faint blue light pulsed slowly, steadily. Marcus approached, his hands trembling as he pulled out his scanner. The readings made no sense. The main reactor was offline, yes, but there was power flowing through the ship. Minimal, carefully rationed, but undeniably present. Then he saw it. 3 reactor mounts. The Armstrong-class design had allowed for multiple cores, an insane redundancy by modern standards. The central core was dead. The second sat dormant, dark, and cold. The third was alive, not active, not generating combat-level output. Sleeping, hibernation mode, Marcus whispered. He'd only read about it in old military manuals. A fail-safe protocol designed to keep essential systems alive for decades, using minimal power, hidden beneath layers of masking to fool external scans. Someone hadn't just abandoned this ship. They had tucked it in. Marcus spent the next hour exploring. Everywhere he looked, the same pattern repeated. Damage where it didn't matter. Reinforcement where it did. Cargo bays breached, but empty. Crew quarters destroyed, but long evacuated. Engineering, the bridge, the computer core, all intact. Even the twisted hull frame everyone had laughed at made sense now. It wasn't collapse. It was reactive armor deployment. The ship had reshaped itself under fire, absorbing impacts, sacrificing form to preserve function. This wasn't a wreck. It was camouflage. Marcus reached the bridge last. The main doors were sealed, their access panel dark. He hesitated, then entered a sequence of numbers he hadn't thought about in years. Codes his grandfather had made him memorize as a child. Just in case, the old man had said. The panel blinked green. The doors slid open. Inside, the bridge was pristine beneath a thin layer of dust. The captain's chair sat at the center, facing dark view screens. Control stations waited patiently, untouched by time. Marcus approached the main console. There was a manual power switch beneath a protective cover. He paused. Once he flipped it, there would be no pretending this was just salvage. He lifted the cover. He flipped the switch. Screens flickered to life. Diagnostics scrolled across displays written in code 2 centuries old. Systems reported in, one by one, cautious but functional. Then text appeared on the central screen. "Welcome back, Captain." "I'm not the captain," Marcus said quietly. The text changed. "Previous captain deceased. New operator detected. Welcome aboard the Indomitable." Marcus sank into the captain's chair, his mind racing. The ship was alive, and whatever it was hiding, the rest of the galaxy had missed it. For now. Marcus didn't leave the captain's chair for a long time. The bridge hummed softly around him. Systems running at the bare minimum required to stay alive. It wasn't the roar of a warship returning to power. It was a whisper, careful, restrained, as if the Indomitable itself understood that waking too quickly would draw attention. Eventually, Marcus forced himself to stand. "Show internal layout," he said. The main screen shifted, displaying a wireframe schematic of the ship. Large portions were grayed out, marked offline or restricted. Engineering glowed faintly. The bridge pulsed steadily. Most of the ship slept. One section stood out. Cargo Hold 3, classified. Marcus frowned. "What's in Cargo Hold 3? The response came instantly. "Access restricted. Unauthorized entry will trigger lockdown and distress protocol." "A distress signal to who?" Marcus asked. There was a brief pause, as if the ship were considering whether the answer still mattered. "United Earth Military Command." Marcus let out a short, humorless laugh. "That government doesn't exist anymore." "Acknowledged," the computer replied. "Protocol remains active." That was the moment Marcus knew this ship was more than a relic. Before he could say anything else, his personal communicator vibrated sharply against his wrist. "Incoming message. Unknown sender. Interested in selling that wreck you bought? 10,000 credits. Immediate transfer." Marcus stared at the number. 10,000 credits. He'd paid 6. His pulse quickened. That kind of offer didn't come from casual curiosity. It came from urgency. Another message arrived before he could respond. 20,000 credits. No questions asked. Then another. Different senders, same tone. Too fast. Too coordinated. Within 5 minutes, Marcus had received 7 offers, each higher than the last. The final message came with a familiar name attached. Kesk Salvage Consortium. 50,000 credits. Final offer. Accept now or face consequences. The temperature on the bridge seemed to drop. Marcus slowly lowered his arm. 50,000 credits would solve every problem he had. It would pay off his debts, keep his business alive, maybe even give him a fresh start somewhere far away from Kepler Station. It was also the clearest confirmation he could have asked for. They knew. They had let him buy the ship because they believed it was truly dead. Now they weren't so sure, and that terrified them. Marcus typed a single response and sent it to every open channel. Not for sale. The reaction was immediate. Threats flooded in, legal warnings, thinly veiled promises of accidents. One message, shorter than the rest, made his skin crawl. That ship has enemies, human. Enemies who have waited 200 years. Marcus turned back to the ship's console. "Show me cargo hold 3, he said quietly. "Access denied." He exhaled slowly and stood. "Then show me the access panel location." The ship complied. The corridor leading to cargo hold 3 was colder than the rest of the vessel. The emergency lights here glowed dimmer, as if reluctant to illuminate what lay beyond. Marcus moved carefully, his footsteps echoing in the long, empty space. The door itself was massive, thick armored plating sealed tight. The access panel beside it was dark, its surface scratched and worn. Marcus hesitated. If he opened this door, there would be no going back. Whatever secret the Indomitable had carried for 2 centuries would become his responsibility. He entered the first override code. The panel blinked red. Access denied. Marcus swallowed and tried again, this time using a different sequence. His grandfather's voice echoed in his memory. You never know when old keys might open new doors. The panel shifted from red to yellow, then to green. The door hissed as seals disengaged. Cold air rushed out, sharp and biting, forcing Marcus to step back. The temperature inside the hold was near freezing, deliberately maintained. His helmet light swept across the space, and his breath caught. 12 stasis pods stood arranged in 2 precise rows. They were smaller than medical stasis chambers, sleeker, built for preservation rather than bodies. Each one glowed with a soft blue light, indicating active containment systems. Marcus approached the nearest pod and wiped frost from its viewing window. Inside, suspended in a translucent gel, was a crystalline structure unlike anything used in modern ships. Complex, layered, alive with faint internal light. A label ran along the side, CM07, Doctor. Sarah Kim, Chief Engineer, Project Prometheus. Marcus's heart began to race. He moved to the next pod. CM03, Commander James Wright, Tactical Operations. Another, CM09, Dr. Alina Vasquez, Advanced Physics. He stepped back, suddenly lightheaded. Consciousness matrices. The rumors flooded back. Half-forgotten history lessons from school, dismissed as unethical experiments that had never truly succeeded. During the first contact wars, humanity had tried something desperate. They had attempted to preserve minds. Not AI trained to mimic behavior, but direct neural copies, thought patterns, problem-solving instincts, strategic intuition. The idea had been to safeguard humanity's greatest thinkers in case extinction became inevitable. The project had been shut down, publicly condemned, officially destroyed. Yet here they were, 12 of them, perfectly preserved, powered by a sleeping warship that had been hiding in plain sight for 200 years. Marcus pulled out his scanner with shaking hands. The diagnostics confirmed what his eyes already told him. All 12 matrices were stable. Waiting. A noise echoed from the corridor behind him. Footsteps. Multiple sets. Fast. Marcus spun around as the ship's internal speakers crackled to life. Security breach detected. Unauthorized boarding. Dock 7. The station's intercom cut in a heartbeat later. Attention all personnel. Security breach on Dock 7. Evacuate immediately. Marcus's blood ran cold. They weren't negotiating anymore. He slammed the cargo hold door controls, sealing it shut just as the sound of boots echoed closer. The heavy door locked into place with a final, ominous clang. Marcus ran. He sprinted back toward the bridge, the ship's corridors lighting up ahead of him as if guiding his path. By the time he reached the command center, the main screen was already displaying tactical data. 15 armed figures in combat suits were approaching his dock. Professionals. The communicator flared to life, Kesk's reptilian face filling the display. You were warned, human, Kesk growled. That ship and its cargo belong to the Saurian Dominion. We have been searching for it for 2 centuries. You lost the first contact wars, Marcus shot back. Kesk's eyes narrowed. We did not lose because of your weapons, he said coldly. We lost because humans adapt, because you think differently. The image shifted, and Marcus realized Kesk was smiling. Those matrices contain the minds that made you dangerous. If we destroy them, we erase your advantage. If we study them, his smile widened. We become you. The transmission cut. Marcus stared at the advancing soldiers on the screen. 15 of them, one of him, a ship barely awake. For the first time since the auction, doubt crushed down on him. He hadn't bought scrap. He'd bought a war that never really ended. And it had just found him, again. Marcus's hands hovered over the controls, frozen between instinct and reality. 15 hostiles, military-grade suits, coordinated movement, no hesitation. This was not a threat meant to scare him into selling. This was an extraction, or an execution. Defensive options, Marcus said, his voice tight. The ship responded immediately. Primary weapons, offline. Shields, offline. Point defense grid, partial. One turret functional, 23% capacity. Marcus exhaled slowly. Recommendation? There was a pause. Short but noticeable. Recommendation, surrender. Yeah, Marcus muttered. Thought so. On the external feed, the boarding team reached the edge of the dock. Magnetic boots locked onto the structure with practiced ease. One of them raised a cutting tool, its tip glowing white-hot. Marcus's pulse thundered in his ears. Running wouldn't help. Fighting wouldn't work. Negotiating had already failed, which left him with exactly one option. Thinking, he pulled up Kepler Station's schematics, his fingers flying across the console. He'd worked here for 5 years, long enough to know the station's quirks, its blind spots, its lazy automation routines left over from early human expansion. Indy, he said, using the name without thinking. Can you access station systems? Station security is limited, the ship replied. Access possible. Do it. Data flooded the screen. Traffic control, dock management, automated logistics, hundreds of ships moving in predictable patterns, governed by AI that prioritized efficiency over creativity. Marcus's eyes locked onto one trajectory. A massive automated ore hauler was scheduled to pass Dock 7 in 3 minutes. Its course would take it close, but not dangerously close, to the dock's external framework. Close enough to matter. Marcus made a tiny adjustment, just a few degrees. The hauler's AI wouldn't flag it. The change was well within normal variance, but it would bring the ship directly through the space where Kesk's soldiers were positioned. Activate the point defense turret, Marcus said. Starting Permendigas? This is Charger something right now. What is this showing the room? Starting Permendigas were rooms of those to the protection, which much more completely were. Tatches and then provable welcome. To more in the 10% of instead to this Permendig information, when we can see the Permendig with a study Permendig, it's a be warming to the individual project when we can see the existing Permendig. If you don't have any Permendig now, it's a build a starting Permendig with this Permendig is a room to effect. When you love the Permendig is the most example. If you never lucked a Permendig mark and we can see them, it's a build a starting Permendig. If you have a necessary, will follow the Permendig from all of the incident. When you love to Permendig mark is those existing Permendig. A temperation Permendig then Permendig positive in your long wants to be there invested. Over the existing Permendig, in spite within temperation, only inches of in a show when you look for what now. If you don't need to stet me to more very clearly preventing ourselves. Promotable, in fact, for good of the individual and Permendig market pasture, when you found up with individual, know best to Permendig s. Leading those rooms discussing leader for you. If you never build in most example, when you cut the 2000, when you're gratis by from mesk until you're profit or fortunal lead. If you don't need a demean mess, then you don't need to Permendig no, to work me. If you told me that Permendig is not very expected to do this individual, leader leave no Permendig when you see the most example, when you found up with individual could not rule. If you told me this Prometic mark is a build in facts when you look forward now, if you do need it for Metig, if you never told the exists, if you never go to do. Tell me that you never build a mean mess when you do need to be during there with any surrogates in tell me and then Prometic beginning self. If you never build a mean mess when you do need to Prometic in their mess. If you don't need a Prometic mark when you take sometimes servifies, never read there, wants to build in facts in tell me Prometic mark. If you do need a dimension unfall to it, if you never go to do there, and still have a nothing until your profit. Wants to build in facts with your grade, and you know martially for your grade, wants to build in facts with your grade when you see that met. If you do need a dimension, unfall to it, with more just to still and tell me again. If you never build in mean mess, when you really see that mean into the Prometic mark, or consider that individual to it. If you only professes a profit marks no for, leader leave the mess exists of individual in tell me Prometic. Promote to Prometic mark in no consistence today again. When you look to equipment of getting mark now, wants to build in facts. And then Prometic mark is true if you never prevent. Release 2 times when your news, in tell me and not at mean. Wants to be into build, no Prometic. Tell me that you know what you are to when you get to the Prometic mark. Also to preview that number of the mark, and then Prometic mark is a build in facts wants to be the DC. If you tell me that you know what you're to, if you never build a mean mess, when you prevent this Prometic mark, in duly for, if you see that met. Also, to more Prometic marks to be doing. If you all load the streetments of release of now, wants to be into build, no Prometic mark. On tell me that you know what you're to, if you never build in facts, wants to do that mess, if you never go to do that man. Tell me that you know what you're to, when you prevent this Prometic mark, and tell me Prometic. If you never met when you are to are, consider the necessary leader. If you're doing there, and more used in your mark, make it teenly. Wants to be a build in facts, if you never prevent this Prometic mark. Wants to be and stare it to do in your mark. Wants to be an ascent, if you never need in facts until your mark. Wants to be and stare it, if you never build in facts until your mark. Okay now, and to use this Prometic mark, if you never need it do it into the diverse. Wants to be a different, if you never need it to not the soldiers, Marcus replied. Dock support cables. Section C7. There was another pause. Clarification. Destroying support cables will destabilize dock integrity. I know, Marcus said. Do it. The turret whined to life, its movement slow and reluctant, like a muscle waking from long disuse. On the external feed, it rotated, locked, and fired. 3 precise shots. The support cable snapped. Dock 7 lurched violently. The boarding team staggered, some losing their grip and slamming into the structure. At that exact moment, the ore hauler emerged from behind the station's bulk. Proximity alarms screamed. The hauler's automated defense system activated, firing warning bursts to clear its path. The soldiers scattered, their formations shattered as they scrambled to avoid being crushed between hulls and hard vacuum. Chaos erupted. Now, Marcus whispered. He opened the station-wide emergency channel. This is Marcus Chen aboard the Indomitable, he broadcast. I am under attack by armed hostiles on Dock 7, requesting immediate security response. Multiple casualties likely if engagement continues. It was a lie, but it was a necessary one. Station security ships appeared within seconds. They had no choice. Armed conflict on a civilian station triggered automatic escalation protocols. Kesk's forces disengaged, retreating toward their transport ship as security closed in. The boarding attempt collapsed as quickly as it had begun. Marcus slumped back in the captain's chair, his entire body shaking. He had won. Barely. His communicator buzzed again. Kesk's face appeared, twisted with fury. This is not over, human, he snarled. You have no idea how many eyes are on that ship. The transmission cut. Almost immediately, another signal came through. This one from Prex. Marcus, the dock manager said, his voice strained. What in the 7 systems just happened? The Council Inspectorate is demanding answers. They're sending a galactic investigator. You've got maybe 24 hours before they impound that ship and tear it apart. Marcus closed his eyes. 24 hours. He turned back to the ship's internal display, focusing on the sealed outline of Cargo Hold 3. Indy, he said quietly, what happens if they take you? Consciousness matrices will be seized or terminated, the ship replied. Mission failure. And you? I will comply with legal authority. Marcus laughed bitterly. Of course you will. There was a flicker on the display. A new line of text appeared. Suggestion, make me whole. Activate secondary and tertiary reactors. Full restoration possible in 18 hours. Marcus stared at the countdown. 18 hours to restore a 200-year-old warship. 24 hours before the galaxy came knocking. And then what? Marcus asked. The response came slowly this time. Then we show them why humans do not stay down. Marcus leaned back, exhaustion pulling at his limbs. The ship's voice, Indy's voice, carried something new now. Not just calculation, intent. He pushed himself to his feet. All right, he said, let's wake you up. Lights brightened throughout the engineering decks as Marcus descended once more. Systems resisted, ancient safeguards protesting every adjustment. His fingers ached as he worked, sweat floating in tiny spheres around him. Cooling system online, Indy announced. The reactor fought him at every step, as if testing his resolve. Then finally the core roared to life. Blue light flooded the chamber. Throughout the ship, dormant systems began to stir. Corridors lit. Consoles blinked awake. The indomitable inhaled. Marcus allowed himself 1 second of relief. Then he turned back toward Cargo Hold 3. Power alone wouldn't save them. Knowledge might. He stood before the first stasis pod, staring at the name etched into its side. Dr. Sarah Kim. If anyone could help him convince the Galactic Council that this ship was more than a weapon, it would be the mind that built it. Indy, Marcus said, placing his hand on the activation controls. Begin consciousness integration. Confidence required. Activation is irreversible. Marcus didn't hesitate. Confirm. The pod hissed open, and the past finally woke up. For several long seconds after the stasis pod opened, nothing happened. Marcus stood perfectly still, afraid that even breathing might break whatever fragile process had begun. The crystalline matrix inside the pod glowed brighter, its internal structures shifting, reconfiguring, streams of data flowing into the ship's core like blood returning to a long-frozen limb. Then the air shimmered. A holographic figure slowly resolved in front of him. She was a woman in her early 50s, wearing an old human military engineering uniform. No rank insignia, no decorations, just clean lines and practical design. Her hair was pulled back tightly, streaked with gray. Her expression, when her eyes finally focused, was sharp and immediately alert. Status report, she said automatically. Marcus swallowed. You're aboard the Indomitable. It's the year 2022. Dr. Sarah Kim blinked once, twice. Then she looked down at her translucent hands. So the project worked, she said quietly. Her gaze snapped back to Marcus. The war. Did we win? Yes, Marcus replied. Barely. It ended about 150 years ago. Dr. Kim closed her eyes for a moment. When she opened them again, something between relief and grief passed across her face. And the ship? She asked. Marcus hesitated. She was scuttled, hidden. I bought her at a salvage auction 3 days ago for 6 credits. For the first time since she'd appeared, Dr. Kim laughed, a short, sharp sound that carried more disbelief than humor. 6 credits, she repeated, for an Armstrong-class cruiser. She studied Marcus more closely now. You're either the luckiest salvager alive, she said, or the most catastrophically unqualified. Still figuring that out, Marcus admitted. The ship's alert tone cut through the moment. Incoming vessel. Galactic Council Authority. Dr. Kim's expression hardened instantly. They're early. They want to impound the ship, Marcus said. And there are others. People who want what's in Cargo Hold 3 destroyed. Dr. Kim didn't ask who. She already knew. The Sorens, she said. They never stopped looking. She moved toward a nearby console, fingers passing through holographic controls with practiced ease. They weren't afraid of our ships, she continued. They were afraid of what we did with them. The tactical display lit up as new contacts appeared. A sleek, diplomatic vessel bearing council markings moved into position. Behind it, carefully outside engagement range, hovered 3 Saurian warships. Kesk had returned. A calm, precise voice echoed through the bridge. Attention vessel Indomitable. This is Investigator Check of the Vin Council Authority. You are ordered to power down all systems and prepare for immediate boarding and inspection. Marcus's hands tightened on the edge of the console. What do we do? Dr. Kim studied the situation for a long moment, her holographic eyes scanning data faster than any human should have been able to. Check is Vin, she said finally. They're rigid but fair. They follow rules to the letter. And Kesk? Dr. Kim's lips pressed into a thin line. He's broadcasting a legal claim, saying the ship was originally Saurian property captured during the war. That's a lie. Of course it is, Dr. Kim said, but proving it could take years. And in the meantime, he gets access to the ship. Marcus felt panic claw up his spine. There has to be something we can do. Dr. Kim was quiet for a moment. Then she smiled. It wasn't a warm smile. It was sharp, calculating, the expression of someone who had solved too many impossible problems to be intimidated by another one. How many people are on Kepler Station right now? She asked. Marcus blinked. 50,000, maybe more. Good, she said. Then listen carefully. Minutes later, the Indomitable's communication systems came fully online. Broadcast on all frequencies, Marcus ordered, his voice steady despite the knot in his stomach. The message went out across the system. Every ship, every station, every private channel within range. Free open symposium aboard the Indomitable. All species welcome. Topic: Human problem-solving methodology. Beginning in 1 hour. Kesk's response was immediate. His snarling face filled the display. You think a lecture will save you? He hissed. I have 3 warships. The council will rule in my favor. Dr. Kim stepped into view beside Marcus, her hologram towering over the display. And then what? She asked calmly. You'll fire on a ship full of students, engineers, civilians from half a dozen council species? No one will come, Kesk snapped. But even as he spoke, ships began to move. First one freighter altered course, then another. Shuttles launched from Kepler Station in clusters. A Vin research vessel announced its intention to observe. A Quellan construction crew requested docking clearance. A university transport ship carrying 200 students broadcast a public confirmation. Marcus watched the tactical display fill with incoming vessels, his mouth slightly open. They're actually coming, he whispered. Of course they are, Dr. Kim said. Curiosity is universal. Humans just learned how to weaponize it. The largest cargo bay was converted into an auditorium in record time. Holographic projectors filled the space, allowing hundreds more to attend remotely. Beings of every shape and size gathered, some nervous, some excited, all intensely curious. Dr. Kim stood at the front, flanked by 2 newly activated holograms. Commander James Wright, Dr. Alina Vasquez. Welcome, Dr. Kim began. Today we're going to discuss how humans approach impossible problems. She gestured, and the current standoff appeared behind her. 24 hours ago, Marcus Chen faced a situation where surrender and violence were the only obvious options, Commander Wright said. Humans look for the third. We don't overpower, Dr. Vasquez added. We reframe. A young Saurian engineer raised her hand, hesitation clear in her posture. How do you learn to think this way? Dr. Kim smiled gently. By asking the wrong questions first, she said, and then realizing they're wrong. For the next hour, they worked through real problems: resource shortages, structural failures, political deadlocks, inviting the audience to participate, to challenge assumptions, to combine methods across species. Laughter broke out, arguments flared, solutions emerged where none had existed before. Investigator Check watched in silence, her compound eyes reflecting the shifting holograms. Finally, she raised a limb. "I have seen enough," she announced. The room went still. "The Saurian claim is fraudulent," Check continued. "Historical records confirm the Indomitable was constructed in human shipyards." Kesk's ships began to withdraw even before she finished. "However," Check said, "a vessel of this capability cannot operate without oversight." Marcus's heart sank. "Therefore," Check concluded, "the Indomitable is hereby designated a cultural heritage vessel under Galactic Council protection. Marcus Chen is recognized as its custodian, tasked with operating the ship as a mobile educational platform." The auditorium erupted. Cheers, applause, unfamiliar gestures of approval from alien hands and appendages filled the space. Kesk's final transmission crackled through, filled with barely restrained rage. But he was beaten. As the crowd dispersed, Dr. Kim turned to Marcus. "Humans don't win by force," she said softly. "We win by making force irrelevant." Marcus looked around at the ship, no longer a weapon, but something far more dangerous, a place where ideas spread. 3 weeks later, Kepler Station no longer whispered when the Indomitable powered up. People watched. From observation decks and private shuttles, from research vessels and cargo haulers lingering longer than necessary, eyes followed the armored cruiser as her systems cycled through readiness checks. The ship that had once been mocked as scrap now gleamed under the station lights, her hull smooth and seamless once more. Smart matter armor flowed like liquid metal, sealing the last scars of a 200-year sleep. External sensor arrays extended and locked into place. Shield generators hummed, not flaring, not threatening, just present. Awake. Marcus Chen stood on the bridge, hands resting lightly on the command console. He still wore the same jacket, still felt faintly out of place in the captain's chair, but something had changed in the way he carried himself. He no longer felt invisible. The bridge was no longer empty. Volunteers from 8 different species moved between stations, speaking in a dozen languages, united by shared curiosity rather than command hierarchy. A Quellan engineer calibrated sensor harmonics alongside a VIN data analyst. A Saurian technician, young, nervous, but determined, checked life support readouts under Dr. Kim's guidance. The irony wasn't lost on Marcus. Behind him, Dr. Sarah Kim's hologram flickered into clarity, hands clasped behind her back as she surveyed the bridge. "You did well," she said. Marcus smiled faintly. "I mostly tried not to die." "An underrated skill," she replied. The ship's AI chimed softly. "All systems optimal. Crew readiness confirmed." "Indy," Marcus said. "Status on our first destination?" "Course plotted. Saurian Colony 7. Request for assistance confirmed." Marcus raised an eyebrow. "They really asked for help?" Dr. Kim nodded. That young engineer from the symposium convinced her administrator. Turns out even centuries of rivalry don't stand up well against a good question. Marcus exhaled slowly, looking out through the forward viewport at the stars beyond Kepler Station. Somewhere out there were beings who still feared the Indomitable, who still remembered her as a ghost story, a threat that refused to stay buried. Some of them were still watching. A quiet alert appeared on Marcus's private display, flagged data from the ship's long-range sensors. Old signals, ancient frequencies, echoes of watchers who had once monitored the Indomitable's hiding place and had not entirely gone away. Marcus glanced at Indy's interface. "You're not telling me everything," he said. There was a pause, just long enough to be noticeable. "Correct, Captain. Some legacy protocols remain unresolved." Marcus nodded. "I figured." Dr. Kim followed his gaze. "The galaxy doesn't forget easily," she said. especially not when something reminds it of uncomfortable truths.
Like what?
That problems don't stay unsolvable, she replied, and that control isn't the same as understanding. The Council's final message arrived just before departure clearance was granted. Investigator Check's voice was calm, formal, but not unfriendly. Marcus Chen. The Council will be watching the Indomitable's mission closely. Cultural heritage status can be revoked if abused. Marcus keyed the response himself. We won't abuse it, he said simply. We'll use it. There was a brief hesitation on the other end. Human history suggests you will, Check replied. In unexpected ways. The channel closed. The bridge lights dimmed slightly as the ship transitioned to departure mode. Kepler Station's massive docking clamps disengaged, releasing the Indomitable into open space. Outside, a small fleet had gathered. Ships of every size and shape held formation. Not in escort, not in defense, but in accompaniment. University transports, research vessels, independent traders. Even a few Saurian civilian ships lingered at the edge of sensor range, curious despite themselves. Marcus felt a lump form in his throat. He hadn't planned this. He had bought a wreck for 6 credits and tried to survive the consequences. Somehow, it had turned into something else entirely. Captain, Indy said softly, hyperspace window stable. Marcus took one last look at Kepler Station, then at the gathered ships beyond. Take us out, he said. The Indomitable moved, not with the aggressive thrust of a warship eager for battle, but with steady, confident momentum. As the stars stretched into lines and hyperspace enveloped the vessel, Marcus felt the hum beneath his feet deepen, a resonance that felt less like machinery and more like purpose. In the data core, 12 preserved minds stirred, aware now of the new role they had been given. Not generals, not weapons, teachers. Dr. Kim's hologram appeared beside Marcus one last time before the jump completed. Your grandfather would be proud, she said. He always believed Armstrong-class ships were built for more than fighting. What were they built for? Marcus asked. Dr. Kim smiled, eyes reflecting the shifting light of hyperspace. To endure, she said, and to protect what matters when everything else fails. The Indomitable emerged into open space on the other side of the jump. Her sensors already reaching outward, her mission no longer classified or hidden. Behind her, knowledge followed. Ahead of her, impossible problems waited. And somewhere, in the quiet corners of the galaxy, those who had spent 2 centuries fearing human adaptability realized something far worse than a warship had returned. Humanity hadn't come back to conquer. They had come back to ask better questions. The Indomitable surged forward, carrying with her the simple, stubborn belief that had always defined her builders. There was always another way, if you were willing to look for it,